Well, good evening, and welcome. And thank you so much for joining me this evening. I want to thank you, many persons, on the 3rd of August, 2025. Thank you for joining me on the Silver Show this beautiful Sunday evening as we get into the new day of the Monday as well. Thank you for those who are joining me on TikTok. Thank you for those who are joining me on Facebook. Thank you for those joining me on YouTube as well. And also, especially on Instagram as well. Thank you for those joining me on Instagram and for those who are going to be joining me in the afterplay. Okay. Well, tonight is going to be continuing the series of Civics Masterclass, which is Civics and Culture. Civics and Culture is what is going to be tonight. Of course, you remember one of the things that I felt very strongly impressed this year is to, instead of talking about civics and say civics is out of the school, civics is in the school, but to use an opportunity on my platform to actually teach a subject and using different persons. If you recall, I had the first show, which was with Miss Joanne Simpson. Joanne Simpson, the author of the book, which is News Vision Civics. We had her at some time ago starting the pace and setting the motion. Then I had also Mr. Matundo Makola on civics and citizenship, which took place. And then I also had Professor Rosalie Hamilton discussing civics and the Constitution, which was very helpful. And my last show before this was Civics Master Class, Civics and the Constitution, which would Miss Jeanette Calder from JAMP. And as it goes on, I'll be having different persons who will be joining the discussion. I'll also be having Mr. What's his name? Lord Simon Woolley, who plan to come on the discussion. But for tonight, I'll be having Mr. Tony Kelly. Mr. Tony Kelly is going to be the guest lecturer tonight on civics and culture. And why this is so very crucial, especially civics and culture, is because we are right in the middle of emancipation and also Independence Day, which is August the 6th. And Tony Kelly is a distinguished diabetes ambassador, advocate, and educator who has dedicated most of his life to promoting health and well-being with community across the UK, and a very staunch supporter in the move towards the Jamaica diaspora and Jamaica as well. And if we look at the whole aspect of this particular topic, civics and culture, Civics Masterclass, which we embarked on a journey to explore the vibrant interplay between civics and culture in shaping the unique tapestry of Jamaica. Civic life in Jamaica is deeply rooted in its rich history of resilience, community, and self-determination, a legacy inherited from its indigenous Taino people and the era of colonization, and the relentless pursuit of emancipation and independence. The Jamaican motto, out of many one people is more than a national slogan. It reflects a fusion of African, European, Asian, and indigenous influences that continue to enrich the nation's civics conversation, democratic values, and social responsibility. As we examine civics within the Jamaican context, it became very clear that culture is both a mirror and a motor of civic identity. Jamaican music, art, language, and customs are not only expressions of individual creativity, but also vital tools for community cohesion and activism. From the spirited debate in its local town hall to the rhythm of reggae and dancehall that carry message of justice and unity, Jamaica culture teaches us how shared values and traditions empower participation in public life. In this series, we'll delve into how civics and culture together inspire Jamaicans to contribute meaningfully to their communities, sustain democratic ideals, and celebrate the nation's enduring motto, out of many, one people. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'll bring in Mr. Tony Kelly. But the format is going to be Mr. Kelly is going to do a lecture. He's going to speak for about 30 minutes, and then I'll open the platform for any questions and answer because I'll put the show eventually up on Spotify and Amazon, so therefore persons can also listen to it, because I find that listening is also something. You don't have to always watch it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Mr. Tony Kelly.
Hello,
Hi,
Steve.
good. Hey, good afternoon, Tony. How are you doing on this beautiful
Thanks
Sunday
for having
evening?
me. Thanks. I'm doing well here in Birmingham. You're in London.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much. Well, welcome and thank you for being one of our guest lecture on the series of civics and culture. But before
Thank
we
you.
go any further, why do you see the importance of civics before we start, Tony?
Well, I grew up knowing everything about Jamaica, from the politicians to the national flag and the heritage and the history and everything. And it should be instilled in every child a sense of
Mm,
purpose, a sense of belonging, a sense of who exactly they are, their culture,
mm.
where they're coming from, and where they're going to. And without it, I'm afraid you're a lost people, a lost soul. So when you see my presentation, it will come out in it quite clearly how important and passionate I am about civics being part and parcel of the Jamaican society, Jamaican upbringing, education, everything about it. That's what makes us who we are.
And also the importance of it again within the diaspora is also important as well, isn't it? Not just
That is
Jamaicans at
correct.
all.
And you'll hear me talk about my role in the Jamaican diaspora here in the United Kingdom, and how we go about bridging and building people together, coming together, especially the youngsters who are born here and
Yes,
know very little about the whole Jamaican culture and so on. All they know is about say chicken or curried goat and so on. And you think, hang on, Jamaica is more than that. And Jamaica, with due respect, is more than Usain Bolt and Bob Marley. There are aspects which
yes.
I'm bringing out, which they need to know about and hear about. So I'm pleased for this opportunity to be able to share my views, having grown up there for quite some time.
Fantastic, fantastic, Mr. Kelly. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can go ahead with your presentation.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
So it starts. It is of importance that I mention from the outset being British born, of Jamaican parents who sent me back to the land of their birth at an early age. So I am more than capable to speak on the subject of civics and culture, which is in my DNA. Brought up in Whitehall in St. Thomas, with my grandmother, May Richards Kelly, my great aunt, Mrs. Ina Watson, a primary school teacher, and her husband, Mr. Wilfred Watson, a plantation owner, I am going to give you a full view of my upbringing within the Jamaican context. So, what exactly is civics? Let's start with that one first. It is the rights and duties of citizenship. In the field of political science, civics is the study of the civil and political rights and obligations of citizens in a society. Jamaica's civic landscape involves a representative parliamentary democratic constitutional monarchy with a it's a hard word to say here, bicameral parliament consisting of a House of Representatives and a Senate. So there's a lower and an upper house. So Jamaicans parliamentarians are elected in a general election, and the representatives in the Senate are chosen by the two main political parties. It is noted that the country recently reintroduced in some schools, not across the entire country, civic education. In schools, emphasizing its importance at all levels from infant to secondary. That I wholeheartedly applaud, as it was long overdue. There has been a lot of discussion and debate about Jamaica becoming a republic and no longer having the king as the head of state, although, like Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica, Haiti, Dominica Republic, and Guyana, it would still remain in the Commonwealth of Nations. However, this presentation won't be delving into such constitutional matters, which are also on hold due to an impending general election in Jamaica. Just for clarity, two-thirds of the majority in Parliament and a referendum will determine that status in due course. So, what is culture? Culture refers to the shared beliefs, customs, practices, social behaviors, and values of a group of people. It encompasses everything from language and religion to food, believe it or not, clothing, and social norms, shaping how a group perceives the world and interacts with each other. Culture is learned, not innate, and is passed down through generations, constantly evolving and adapting. Let's go down memory lane, a nostalgic journey where I will reminisce about the 60s and 70s growing up in Jamaica. On hearing the word civics, it immediately conjures up memories of my childhood growing up on the beautiful island, as civics was a mandatory or compulsory subject on the school curriculum at primary and high school, similar to maths and English. Marcus Garvey, one of the seven Jamaican national heroes, said, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." That quote emphasizes the importance of misunderstanding one's history and cultural heritage for a strong sense of identity and purpose. So I must reiterate, a return to the subject civics on the school curriculum is so appropriate and long overdue. From an early age, a sense of civic pride was instilled in us by our teachers, and one learned about the seven Jamaican national heroes, 6 men and 1 woman, the significance of National Heroes Day, the national anthem, the pledge, the national symbols and emblems, the May Day, Labor Day, Independence Day, the 6th of August, and of course, not forgetting being bilingual with English language and the Jamaican language patois as our means of communication. Emancipation Day, the 1st of August, has now been rightly added as a red letter day in the Jamaican calendar. Every school in the country back then, 60s and 70s, had copies of Civics for Young Jamaicans, published in 1967 by Leonard Cecil Ruddock. And they also had History of Jamaica by Clinton V. Black, which was published in 1961. And we had to read that and digest it from cover to cover. We knew exactly aspects of our history, including the slave trade, the Arawaks, latterly referred to as the Tainos, and the Caribs, and took a different take in latter years of the well-known myth that Christopher Columbus discovered Jamaica in 1492, which frankly was always there. We learned about independence, referendum, federation, the two main political parties, including their founders and their leaders, the two main trade unions, Bustamante Industrial Trade Union, BITU for short, affiliated to the Jamaica Labour Party, and the National Workers Union, NWU, affiliated to the People's National Party. Trevor Monroe, a then lecturer at the University of the West Indies, tried to break the monopoly of the two-party system by forming the Workers' Party of Jamaica, a Marxist-Leninist party, in December 1979, which became defunct by 1992. At the last general election in Jamaica on the 3rd of September 2020, the voter turnout was an incredible 37.85%, which is shockingly low. Universal adult suffrage on the 20th of November 1944 gave Jamaicans over the age of 21 the democratic right to vote in local and general elections. Prior to that date, suffrage was limited to those who met certain property and income requirements. So everybody didn't have the right to vote prior to 1944, universal adult suffrage. I hold firmly to the view that if civics had remained on the school curriculum and the issue of universal adult suffrage was addressed more vocally, many more voters would have been inclined to exercise their democratic right. Jamaica is fortunate to have the power to choose which political party should form its government. as there are still countries in the world where they have no voting rights at all, or where they have to stand in queues for as long as 6 hours to do so. The people of Jamaica should not take such a fundamental right for granted, as people in some countries have actually paid the ultimate price with their lives, fighting for justice, freedom, and liberty on the path to democracy. Apathy and inertia are totally unacceptable. And my view is, even if one wishes to spoil the ballot whilst in the voting booth, then do so. But to be absent from the electoral process is indefensible. As an active member of the Jamaica Diaspora UK, which you touched on at the beginning, Silburn, for several years, and Secretary of the West Midlands region for 4 years, regularly delivering on health and well-being in relation to diabetes at biannual JDUK conferences in Birmingham, Sheffield, and Leeds, to use a well-known saying, "Me no pia pia," or "me no drop from sky." I mentioned that, seriously, as recently, one of the past chairs of the Jamaica Diaspora UK, Dr. Kevin Brown, whilst living and working in England, but currently the president of the University of Technology, formerly known as CAST, College of Arts, Science and Technology, gave someone at a Jamaican radio station, which shall remain nameless, my details as they wanted to interview a yardie on a particular popular radio show because someone had dropped out at the last minute. The researcher and I spoke via WhatsApp, and she stated that I fitted the bill perfectly based on my resume, my CV, only for the producer of the show to decide I could not be interviewed as, wait for this, I am not a Jamaican. On querying what that was supposed to mean, I was told I was not born on the island, so not a yardie. Let me make it crystal clear to the viewers and listeners that I'm more Jamaican than some who are born and bred in Jamaica. That shocking incident happened fairly recently, and is right and proper that I mention it now. This parochial and narrow-minded mentality has got to stop, as it is not a progressive way or in any way, shape, or form. I lived in Jamaica, although I was born in Britain, for 19 years, including primary, high school, and tertiary education at Michael Teachers College, and taught in 3 Kingston high schools before returning to the land of my birth in 1979. The Jamaican diaspora is made up of people across the globe, and to end up discriminating on the grounds of someone's birthright is unthinkable. How many viewers, listeners can actually say, for argument's sake, that they have climbed the Blue Mountain Peak, which was successfully inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015? Well, Silburn, I have climbed the Blue Mountain Peak in the summer of 1979 with other colleagues from Holy Childhood High School, where I used to teach, prior to returning home, so to speak. When I say home, home to England, later that year. I hold to the view that if so many foreigners and tourists actually visit Jamaica to do so, I should be able to tick that off on my bucket list. Of course, one can never forget the aroma and taste of Blue Mountain coffee, which is world famous, as is the distilled white rum from the sugar plantations. Culturally, they are the envy of the world. Civics for Young Jamaicans, 1967, by Leonard Cecil Ruddock, and History of Jamaica by Clinton V. Black were well-known textbooks that we read. And in addition to them, there were also the Student's Companion. I'm going back a bit now. You probably remember that, Silburn. The First Aid in English, and for good measure, the Gleaner Spelling Bee book. My great-aunt's extensive library in Whitehall at her home had the full set of Britannia Encyclopedia and a vast array of other books, so far removed from the advent of computers, mobiles, smartphones, Kindle tablets, etc. Reference books at most libraries back in that era could not be borrowed. They couldn't leave the library at all. Unlike the youngsters of this generation, having a fountain of knowledge at their fingertips. In that regard, they're so much more further forward than us. They just ask Google or ask this one or ask Alexa or ask Siri and they get the answer. We never had that in our day of growing up. Part of our education was knowing our times table and being able to read the time on a watch or a clock, which most youngsters now would resort to digital mode, and even they get the chance to use calculators in examinations. My gosh, haven't we moved on? That was unthinkable in the era or time I was alluding to. Simple addition, multiplication, division, and subtraction, which is mental arithmetic, is a thing of the past and sadly, in my view, a retrograde step. Even comprehension is no longer a requirement in some regards. And don't get me started on the mobile phone text speech, where the word SEE becomes the letter C, YOU becomes U, and ARE becomes R. Come on, we need to go back to basics and get these children to just write and speak in the proper English language. Jamaican playwrights and poets such as Roger Mays, Claude McKay, Jean DaCosta, Andrew Salke, Trevor Rohn, Dennis Scott, to name a few, passed on the mantle in terms of their creative writing to the late Michael Smith, Okura Onura, poet Mutabaruka, Kai Miller, Marlon James, Nicole Dennis Ben, and Valerie Bloom. The Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sports seem like parallel lines that never meet, as culture amounts to our heritage, our roots, and our identity. And for the present generation to have been devoid of these aspects in the classroom was unforgivable and regrettable. Thankfully, Jamaica has come full circle and gone back to basics, so the current generation can become more knowledgeable about the past, the present, and the future. White Rich of Rose Hall, Port Royal earthquake, Mark Bay Rebellion, the Kendall train crash, Independence Day, 6th of August, 1962, Emancipation Day, which I mentioned earlier, 1st of August, Emancipation Park, National Heroes Circle, National Heroes Park, religious observations and holy days, festival competitions in the performing arts were embedded in our upbringing. Even funerals then were a somber affair, with black, white, and purple being the dominant colors for mourning. And a setup or night or a wake was a time of reverence and certainly not jollification. The signs of the times mean the current generation do not really value and appreciate the significance of that era, as it is now the loudest sound system and the scantily dressed clothing to go along with that. I'm very sad to see that happening. It was customary that everyone stood at the first chords of the Jamaican national anthem as it began to play at any event. The words of both verses were known by heart and sung with feeling or gusto or emotion, which was, I also need to mention that the Jamaican flag itself was never hauled across the floor or on the ground under any circumstances, which I see happening sometimes now. That was part of the civic pride instilled in us from the outset, and it was respected without question. Okay? Proverbs or proverbial sayings were the order of the day. They still are in some groups, but some of the young people, I'm afraid, don't know some of these proverbs. Here are just a few and their meanings as they formed part of our upbringing, culture, and heritage. I really appreciated how Laurette Hudson, who resides in London, has taken the time, energy, and effort to preserve for posterity 52 proverbs on individual cards with their meanings in things Mama used to say. Parents, guardians, teachers should use that as a reference point when imparting the knowledge of these proverbs to the current generation. So there are 52 in the pack, and each one, I'll read out, say 4. I have a lot listed here, but I won't be able to do them all. If you not have good, fi say, no say bad, which means always say positive things, and if you can't, refrain from making any comments. If you can't hear, you will feel. I think most will know that. If you don't listen to advice when given, you will end up in trouble. Wanty can't get it, and getty no wanted. This is part of our history and our culture. The young children need to know these. People in dire need are more appreciative of things than the ones who have it and don't appreciate it. The last one I'll read, no set hungry dog fi catch corn. Don't put temptation in someone's path. I would urge people to, because you can do it at your dinner party, you can do it in the classroom, or you're at your friend's house or so, and you say, look at this proverb. I remember my grandmother used to say it, or my mother used to say it, or so. That is part of our culture and our heritage. We mustn't let die out, is what I'm saying loud and clear. Let me move on to the music. The genre of music went from folk to gospel to ska to rocksteady to reggae to dub to hip hop to dancehall to ragga. And ragga is a subgenre of dancehall and reggae music. Music is supposed to be a universal language. It's supposed to be uplifting, empowering, and have a social consciousness lyrics about it. But of late, the lyrics have been very crude, and they glorify crime and violence and degrade women as sexual objects. We need to go back to basics and have better songs than what I hear sometimes on the radio. Folklore involving tales of big boy jokes, Anansi, the Samphire or the trickster, as well as Duppy stories, were the order of what some would describe as the good old days. And these were verbally relayed by elders as they passed them down the generation. Sadly, everybody's hooked on the PlayStation and the Game Boy and the this and the Kindle and the mobile phone. They don't have any time to even relate and hear others talking about these so-called stories that I mentioned, part of our folklore. There still remain rituals around nine night, setup, and wake. But some of the celebrations these days amount to lavish, party-like atmosphere instead of the solemn and mournful occasions of the past, where the reading of biblical passages, prayers, and choruses were the norm, and not forgetting, as we would say, your chocolate tea. Okay? The annual Island Festival competition at parish, regional, and national level in speech, poetry and drama, arts and crafts, dance, culinary arts, and singing has certainly kept some of the cultural traditions alive, and that's to be applauded. Mento, ring games, kumina, mayal, quadrille, maypole dancing, revival, and of course, jankuno are still in vogue thanks to aficionados and historians who are determined that these expressive cultural art forms are not wiped out or become confined to the history books. Long may that continue as modern technology interventions, such as I alluded to, the Kindle, the tablet, the smartphone, and the computer, are making the previous customary way of life almost non-existent or redundant. One cannot be speaking on the subject of culture without mentioning Jamaica's first lady of folklore and comedy, affectionately known as Miss Lou, or the Right Honorable Louise Bennett Coverley. Thankfully, a lot of her poems and performances from as far back as the 60s, I should say, some are in black and white, are still available for youngsters to listen, watch, and learn on YouTube. She paved the way for making the Jamaican language, often referred to as patois, more acceptable in society, so that several of the books of the New Testament have been translated by a team of linguists and translators for the West Indies Bible study in order to reflect the progress made in that regard. Jamaicans must accept the fact that it is a bilingual nation and one needs to speak in one's native tongue depending on the content and the context, I should say, and the social occasion, without being frowned upon and being told that it is bad or poor English. They should also be able to converse in standard English as and when appropriate. Bob Marley, who is internationally famous, really needs no introduction, but that is only who some Jamaicans know about alongside the rappers and dancehall artists. The prophetic lyrics of Bob Marley's songs and anthems make the modern day artists who claim to be making popular music for the masses pale into insignificance. They will never stand the test of time. 50 years' time, we'll still be singing Bob Marley songs. Let's touch on the folk songs. As the late Dr. Olive Lewin, leader and founder of the Jamaica Folk Singers in 1962, along with Hazel Ramsey, who is still a member of the group, after Edward Seaga, the Minister of Development and Welfare, with responsibility for all areas of planning, social development, and culture, secured funding from UNESCO for field research to be conducted in visits to many maroon settlements across the island, with tape recorders to record for posterity many of the folk songs that we hear, love, and sing today. Sometimes the elderly folk in these communities, according to what Miss Olive told us at rehearsals, could not remember the lyrics, but Miss Olive, as she was affectionately called, would ask them to hum the tune, and later she would put words to them. That is exactly why many are known as Jamaican folk songs. There are some which are Caribbean folk songs, but the bulk of them, most of them are Jamaican folk songs. And I often end up correcting people who say that they are Caribbean and not Jamaican folk songs. They are sung all over the Caribbean and all over the world. I hasten to add, I was a tenor in that group in the 70s. And Miss Olive, twice a week at rehearsals, would recount the days for us to understand and fully appreciate the depth, knowledge, and expertise of that all-important aspect of the Jamaican culture and folklore. As a matter of fact, one of Miss Olive's contemporaries, who shall be nameless, from the School of Music, as it was called then, frowned and laughed at the idea of the project, which was Hazel Ramsey and Miss Olive, going with tape recorders. And these kids of today don't even know what a tape recorder is. They'd have to go into the maroon towns and sing the songs and what have you and so on. And that's been there, preserved for posterity, instead of them taking it to their grave. That's so important. Our daughter, my wife and myself, our daughter Abigail is a classically trained singer in Birmingham, England. And she's been given a suite of these same Jamaican folk songs composed in a classical style by Peter Ashbourne, the well-known Jamaican composer and musician, which she performs on the concert platform across the globe, alongside arias from Mozart, Donizetti, Puccini, Bach, and Beethoven, to name a few, in order to keep the Jamaican folk music alive. They are so well received with rapturous applause. Some people come afterwards and say, you know, I haven't heard that Jamaican folk song in 40, 50 years. I've lived in England all this while. She's making sure it is there. Last page but one. I was honored to attend the commemorative lecture given by Professor Neville Ying at the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica at the Jamaica Memory Bank, 12 Ocean Boulevard, Kingston, in October 2024. That cultural organization is doing its utmost to keep this aspect of the culture, heritage, and folklore alive. The University Singers and the National Dance Theatre Company, NDTC, and singers have been doing their part in a remarkable way for several years as they continue to make sure that the performing arts do not diminish under the wave of internet, social media, websites, which are destroying the very essence of the cultural norms, mores, and customs. Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts on Tom Redcamp Avenue in Kingston, opposite the Liquor Theatre, and the Philip Sherlock Center for the Creative Arts at the University of the West Indies are well-established places of excellence where creative talents is being nurtured and on display. Ward Theatre in Parade, downtown Kingston, used to host for the Liquor Theatre Movement, LTM, an annual pantomime from way back, even before I probably was born, which opens each year on Boxing Day until it was moved to the Liquor Theatre itself in Crossroads. I was actually in one of the pantomimes before I came back to England, known as the $12 Million Man. The Ranny Williams Center, named after a well-known comedian who used to be in a lot of pantomimes, the Ranny Williams Entertainment Center in Hope Road, is named after somebody of quite importance, which the children and the youngsters need to know about. They might know more about Miss Lou, but Ranny Williams is a name that they need to start doing more research on. And apart from him, here are some other names I'll mention. Dorothy Cunningham, Faye Ellington, Charles Hyatt, Leonie Forbes, Oliver Samuels, and Vernon Darby. These are just some of the many talented actors and actresses who honed their craft on the Ward Theatre stage and elsewhere. One can never forget the late Barbara Gluden, not only as a broadcaster on radio, but a script writer for many historical pantomime productions. This way, she weaved the history of Jamaica in drama on the stage and it's etched in one's memory for a long time with song, movement, dance, and speech. As indeed Marjorie Wiley, who was the musical composer director of the NDTC Singers, and Rex Nettleford, founder of the internationally acclaimed dance company, which is still thriving as we speak. Institute of Jamaica, down in East Street, Kingston, and the National Art Gallery in Kingston Mall, Ocean Boulevard, are packed with artifacts, archives of the culture of the island, which I am imploring and begging school children and their teachers and their guardians and their parents and their community workers to visit and see aspects of our culture and heritage. They'll be surprised at the amount of stuff that's in those places I just mentioned, the National Art Gallery and the Institute of Jamaica. I really appreciated how my alma mater, which was Happy Grove High School in Portland, used to make sure, apart from the learning we did in the classroom, we had field trips into Kingston and into other parts of the country as well, not just the capital and not just the corporate area. We had field trips to go and see how things were back in those days or so on and so forth. And so it gave us a sense, really opened our eyes with our eye openers to see how people lived back then. And I'm talking the 60s, 70s. So we're talking how they lived back in the 40s, 50s, that sort of thing. One has to make mention of the film, The Harder They Come, starring Jimmy Clift and Carl Bradshaw, which was way before its time as far as cinematography is concerned, and took it to another level. Playwright Trevor Rowan's Smile Orange and Schools Out brought to Jamaican audiences and further afield aspects of the rich tapestry of culture intertwined in the humor that one associates with Jamaicans, who are some of the most creative, innovative, and talented persons, even with limited resources at times. Living proof of we can turn with hand, make fashion, and with little but with talawa. Coming to an end, food is part and parcel of Jamaican culture. And as my late father used to say, food is the staff of life, but rum is life itself. Jamaica brought to the world jerk seasoning, authentic spices such as pimento and other herbs and spices to flavor dishes. I see curry being sold on the market in England, for example, in packets, which taste nothing like proper Jamaican curry. But because the advertisers put the Jamaican flag on the packaging, which is wrong under the Trade Description Act, It sells. That brand Jamaica. If you walk Silburn or anybody listening to this walks into a room and there are 100 flags, trust me, 99% of the people will recognize and tell you that is the flag of Jamaica. We stand out. We're a little island, but we're global. We're all over the place and we stand out. And then come across some bigger countries with lots of people and they can't recognize the flags of those countries. So that in itself tells you how powerful an impact Jamaica has had on the world stage. And we mustn't lose sight of that. Clearly, going back to this branding issue, it needs to be put right. The same principle happens with goat meat, which some butchers sell to consumers in England, and they tell you it's goat meat. And I'm telling you, it's sheep or mutton, because the texture of goat. I grew up in Jamaica. I know what goat meat tastes like, and it don't taste like nothing, but they sell it as goat meat. And they even cook it and telling you this is curried goat. When you taste it, it tastes nothing like the real McCoy when we get back home. I have to mention at this stage in closing, whether Mother's, Tasty, or Juicy Beef, these are the patties we're talking about now. They are the real McCoy. I get patties in England, and I call them patty cousins because they don't taste nothing like the proper Jamaican patties. And that's part and parcel of, you talk about the meatloaf and the patty. That's part of with culture as well. Huh? In closing, thank you, Silburn, for allowing me the opportunity to share my perspective on the civics and cultural landscape of Jamaica. 25 years into the new century, as the younger generation know nothing different, having never lived in those bygone days or years. This will also be part of the archives, this very talk I'm giving, as have the others that you mentioned earlier, as they are understandably dependent on what knowledge has been passed on to them by their elders in the spoken word, by films, by documentaries, I should say, artifacts in the nation's museums and art galleries, microfiche, cameras, photos, songs, dance, libraries, and media outlets. And I must end by bigging up the Jamaica Information Service, the Jamaica Gleaner, the Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation, which was called JBC, and RJR, Radio Jamaica and Rediffusion, who have been in existence even before my time and your time, Silburn. And they have been part and parcel of the natural history, the oral history, the passing down through the ages. And they have lots of stuff which needs to be made available for people to know more, especially the younger generation, about civics and our culture. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Tony, for this very educational discussion. And I must say, one of the first thing I was thinking about, who sang this song, Music Alone Shall Live? Music Alone Shall Live? The Olive Lewin.
No, I don't think so. No, not that one.
You're taking me back. And
I know a lot of the Jamaican folk songs, but I don't know of Olive Lewin and her group singing that one.
Yeah, but somebody just asked me. I just want to pick up a couple of questions. Somebody asked me, where can they get some of these songs? You know, some of the songs that you talk about, the folk songs.
Right, yes. Well, I love to watch them. The University Singers, they have an annual concert every year, and the Jamaican Folk Singers have an annual concert every year. But even if you can't get to Jamaica, visit YouTube. YouTube has a lot of these songs done by the Carrie Folk Singers, the Jamaica Folk Singers, the University Singers, and the NDTC Singers. Feast your heart on YouTube, watching those songs and passing them on to your children and moving and shaking and so on. And when my daughter, as I mentioned earlier, when she does them in audiences all around the country, it's in a classical twist, of course, because they've been composed by Peter Ashbourne. But once they realize, hang on, that's a Jamaican folk song she's singing, the place just erupts. Literally erupts. She's been to Montserrat, she did the same thing there, and the people just erupted. She's been to Cayman Islands, and the same thing happened there. So they are available on YouTube, I should say. They are available.
And also, one of the things, though, that you sort of highlighted and mentioned about I wouldn't. I don't know if I should say the dumbing down because of what social media is now like in
Hmm.
regards to some of these. Can social media capture? Because Tony, the new generation
That's what.
is going away from some of
Um,
these historical
mhm,
things. Can
mhm.
social media, artificial intelligence, I don't know, can they capture these? Because the
Well,
new
the same
generation, yeah, yeah, go on, yeah,
the same way you have for a number of years done your the Silver and Sidel show and
yes,
made sure to focus on the Caribbean and on Jamaica and on the various aspects and the political landscape and so on and crime. You focus on crime and
mm,
education and so on. And you brought that to the masses and you have a big following on
mm,
TikTok and Facebook and Spotify and so on. You've been able to do that. I'm in the process with a website designer, Morgan, MRC Media, of wanting to do a regular blog that which will cover a lot of health and well-being and so on. So people need to run with the mantle, take up the mantle, run with it, and say, what can I do to preserve parts of our history and our heritage? And as I said, a lot of it is already on YouTube. I've seen stuff on YouTube in black and white that not Olive, that Miss Lou did from back in the 50s and 60s. And I thought
yes,
the BBC I brought it out and I thought, wow, wow. Are these children nowadays, are these youngsters going in and typing in Miss Lou or Ronnie Williams and seeing what was being done by her back from the 50s when, because she studied at in Britain here, as did Olive Lewin. They both studied here on scholarships. But social media, yes, it's got its place with terms of the young people and what they want. But if they really are interested in learning more about their history, their culture, where they're coming from and where they're going to, because it's the past reflects the present, reflects the future. If they really want to, because we've made sure to do that with our daughter. Um, Abigail speaks Jamaican patois,
mm,
just like anybody, and all these sayings and so on. And we use these at dinner parties and so on. Things Mama used to say by Laureate Hudson. And every time I visit Jamaica, I buy at least 4 or 5 from her and take and give out there to friends and say, you need to use these and pass on the knowledge and the information to your friend. I mean, Miss Lou had a book called Jamaica Labrish. I'm not so sure
mm.
whether it's still available. It might be, but that had all of her poems in Jamaican language in a book, which people used to recite and enter in festivals and so on. So that might still be available. But especially going down by downtown, the Jamaica Memory Bank that they have almost got all of Olive Lewin's songs and so on, and lots of other material down there, which kids during the summer holidays and on school trips need to go and see and do some research on. And the University of the West Indies has stuff as well, you know.
Well, what I'm gonna do, just briefly, and for ladies and gentlemen, Tony Kelly highlighted his daughter, very much involved in singing, and I did interview her some time ago, and I do have a piece of her, and I'm gonna play just a brief, just to see how things are captured at the same time. Here it is.
Mi piace bello, bello, andare in Porto Rossa a comperar l'anello. Sì, sì, ci voglio andare. E se l'ammassi intorno, andrei sul ponte vecchio, ma per buttarmi in arno mi strago in me tormento. Oh, vorrei morire.
And fantastic. Tony,
I say for
what,
those who want to know, if they want to know a bit more about Upper, that's
yeah,
from Puccini. O mia
yeah,
beatina caro, which means my beloved father.
yes.
That's from the Upper, uh, um, composed by Puccini.
One of
Puccini.
yeah, one of the reasons why I played it, and there wasn't a sort of folk song for Jamaica, but what you're saying is that the voice of Abigail Kelly is being used promoting cultural songs, cultural Jamaican songs as well, isn't it?
That's right. And let me give you a score. Once
Yeah,
she, a couple of years ago, because she's been doing opera for quite some time, once she did something for Jamaica and sang the national anthem. And somebody who doesn't know anything about her background put on YouTube or on Facebook or one of the social media. Why do they have to use somebody from Britain to do this? And then my good friend, I have a good friend who went to Michael with me named Joan Isaacs. She just answered the person and said, Abigail's father is more Jamaican than Jamaican. Leave his daughter alone. If she wants to sing the Jamaican national anthem, which they asked her to do for this particular performance in Jamaica on webinar or what have you, stop. And this is the issue with social media. See, there's too many key people on the keyboards putting in their two penny worth and need to keep their mouth shut or need to come off it altogether and allow people with sense to comment on it. But
yeah,
thanks for showing that. That's been
yeah.
some years ago.
Yeah,
But,
definitely. When she was on my show, yes. And
yes.
finally, and finally, and I'll just repeat a couple of the comments that people: should
Mhm.
Jamaicans be deprived of enjoying the fullness of Jamaica by virtue of birth? I know you said something earlier, and the way how civics is sort of a body, an embodiment of Jamaica. And as
Mhm.
you rightly say, you're invited, but then by virtue of the fact that you were
Yes, they
born
pushed
in
me
Jamaica,
aside. Yes, yeah.
yeah,
That hurt. That because as I said in the piece that I've just done reading to you, and I'll say it loud and clear, I am more Jamaican than most of the Jamaicans that are out there. When I
yeah,
go there, I just get back into the culture and the norms and the mores and so on. And it's part and parcel of us here. My wife is Jamaican and so on and so. But that didn't go down well with me at all. And I shared it with a few people, and they said, "Tony, are you for real? Did this really happen?" I said, "Yes." Dr. Kevin Brown sought me out, gave my information, and said, "This is the perfect person to go in lastminute.com to do this show." And then the producer suddenly decided. And when I go to Jamaica, like I've been there November 2022 and 2024, other stations are having me on and say, "Hey, you're out here doing health and
mm,
well-being. It's somebody like you we need to be talking to and how you manage, because I have type 2 diabetes, as is well known, for
mm,
20 years, but I've never taken medication. Zumba, Pilates, aerobics, you name it, swimming, I do, and eat healthfully. So, you can't cut your nose off to fight your face. And Jamaicans need to
yeah,
try and, whichever ones, and since all Jamaicans, can't generalize, but the ones who are in positions of power and authority need to think, well, hang on, the diaspora is bigger than just whoever lives on the island of Jamaica or whoever is
yes.
born there.
Someone said, I'm going to say it from TikTok. We can't hold young people hostage to the 1950s and 60s.
No, we're not holding them hostage. It's about education, awareness
Mm,
raising. It's not about us holding them hostage. They,
mm,
in their own time, the same way they look about Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber and this one and the other, they need to know where their grandparents came from, where their mother and father, their parents, where their uncles came from, and get a sense of their history and their purpose and their belonging and so on. So it's nothing about hostage. That's a crude way of putting it. I wouldn't agree with that view at all. It's not hostage at
uh,
all.
I was looking for my
Knowledge
Bob.
is power.
Yeah, I was looking for my Bob Marley book, or like my Marcus Garvey. People without, what's the thing about the heritage? What is it again?
Without roots. Yes, the well-known saying. If you don't have roots in terms of the tree having roots, then you might as well just give up.
Yes,
Huh?
and
Um,
I think it is important, because major groups, and I
mhm.
quote the Jews for argument's sake, they ensure that their
Exactly.
children
Taught.
know certain
Mhm.
that bas meters and all those sort of things. They
Mhm.
follow those routes,
Yes, yes.
and you can
Mhm.
see the strength. But
Mhm.
sometimes I believe that sometimes we try to throw off, as my friend said, the past in a sense, when we are showing off the roots. Because as I
Mhm.
walk in the park and I use this, there's a thing in the park that says, look at the birds and look at the oak tree, look from
Mhm.
the root
Mhm.
upwards.
Mhm.
Look from the root upwards because the root stems
Mhm.
the base, the
Mhm.
foundation, and the substance.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
therefore, my view, Tony, and what I'm picking up is that it is incumbent upon us, you,
Mhm.
me, to really keep
Exactly.
in the torch.
Mhm. Let me give you something before you go.
Yeah.
Dr. Kevin Brown and the staff at UTech. That's what they gave to me, and I take that to the gym whenever I
All
go
right.
to the gym.
We'll
You
call
have on
Kevin.
your Jamaican flag.
We'll
How
call
many
Kevin. We'll
people?
call Kevin. We'll call Kevin coming to get one.
You have on your Jamaican flag. I have my Jamaican flag here. I also have my Jamaican tie. I was at an event down in London and I wore this, and somebody
Yeah.
came up straight to me and said, "Are you from Jamaica?" I thought, here we go again. Here we go
Yeah.
again. Is there a
How did
Jamaican
they
thing?
know? How did they know? How did
Well,
they
there
know?
was a tie and that. So that person talking about hostage. How many of these kids would actually invest in having some of these things? So when occasions come, they wear them with pride and so on, on behalf of their parents, their grandparents, and so on and so forth. So they need to rethink their whole strategy. And don't use the word hostage. That's a cringe-worthy word to even want to bring into the equation. It's about
Yes.
knowledge is power, education, awareness raising, and you got to start somewhere. So when somebody's telling you, "Oh, go back to your country or go back to where this and you have the right, perfect answers to give to them."
Yeah. Someone from Guyana says, thank you for sharing knowledge of Jamaica. I'm from parents of Guyana to listen to your discussion as
You're
well.
welcome,
Uh,
Belinda. Mhm.
so Tony, I want to thank you so much, and I keep it tight with this discussion so people
Mhm.
can actually go back and listen to it, because there's a wealth of information there, and you flag up some people that I need to actually bring in on the discussion. Faye
Mhm.
Ellington, my good friend, I just realized, shucks, I need to contact Faye Ellington to get her on the program like this. These
Yes.
are gems. These are
Yes.
gem persons,
Oh
gems
yes. Oh
in
yes. Oh yes.
Jamaica that we need to utilize. And
Yes. Mhm.
sometimes some will say they are washed up or finish off, but we've got to
Oh,
capture
oh,
them
no, no,
and
no, no, no.
utilize them,
Mhm.
Tony, as
Yes.
much as possible. Yeah. Any last words, sir,
Absolutely.
Tony?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. I had to go and think now. What shall I say? A lot more could be said, but what one is time limited in terms of. But I am glad I saw the best of both worlds, where my parents
Yes.
decided, let's send. Where would I be? I keep on asking myself, had I remained here, would I be part of the mental health system, the criminal justice system, or probably no longer here or so on? They did the right thing, because you cannot beat a Jamaican education. You heard me talk about mental arithmetic, about the spelling bee,
Mm.
about this and that and the other. That was proper education. Pass your common entrance exam, just like you did. You went to York Castle High. I went to
Yes.
Happy, then on to Micro Teachers College. We were grounded. Oh my gosh. And we never had computer then. We never had all these
Mm.
gadgets. Huh? Huh? And the
I,
knowledge remained in here.
I
Hmm?
just realized that on Instagram, someone said, Ardeen Bonner said, we see Anansi as a trickster. My former employee, Stanley, saw him as Spider-Man. And the rest they say is history. It is a
Yes.
value we place on our cultural and intellectual
Yes,
property.
yes, but he was a trickster or some fine man. Yes, yeah. But it's something that we need to be able to be aware of, and then know
Yeah.
how to get out of situations so that we're not tricked.
Mm.
Because that's what scamming is all about now.
Yes.
Those are the modern day Nancy's that are out there scamming
Yes.
people and fraud and fraudulence and so on.
Mm.
Mhm.
All right, Tony. Well, Tony, listen, I want to thank you so much.
Mhm.
It's 10 o'clock now, your bedtime.
Yes,
Have a
us
good night.
early ones.
Yeah, thank you for sharing,
Much,
and
much
your heart
appreciated.
as well, and
No,
much appreciated. And we'll
okay.
talk, sir.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks, Silver.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. Thank you for being a part of this discussion, civics, the masterclass on civics, and of course, I'm going to get different persons to come in and to share their heart on the whole topic. Now, the topic is one which is sometimes multifaceted, and sometimes also persons will disagree with certain aspects. But what I'm trying to do is to capture different persons from different eras to keep the knowledge going. And as they say, someone mentioned the other day that in the relay, and they refer to 2012, you got the first runner, you got the second one, you got the third one, but the fourth one is the finisher. That's the one that Usain Bolt just finish off that one. So therefore, it could be a situation whereby we're at that point where sometimes we are the finishers, and by being the finishers, we've got to actually capture the ending, and for the next generation as well. So as we examine civics with the Jamaican context, as we can see, it has become clear that culture is both a mirror and a motor of civic identity. The Jamaican music, as Mr. Kelly mentioned, art, language, and custom, not only expressions of individual creativity, but also vital tools for community cohesion and activism. From the spirited debates in town hall to rhythm of reggae, dancehall that he mentioned, carry messages of justice and unity. Talk about Bob Marley. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Words of Marcus Garvey. Jamaican culture teaches us how to share values and traditions, empowered participation in public life. You know, delve into how civics and culture together inspire Jamaicans to contribute meaningfully to their communities, sustain democratic ideals, and celebrate the nation's enduring motto, out of many one people. Controversial it may, but that's the case. I want to thank those who have joined on the show, those who are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok. And you can watch the replay on YouTube, which is Silver and TV. Remember to like and subscribe, which is much appreciated. Do appreciate like this, and also it's going to be on Spotify and rss.com, where I'm going to show just the audio version, because people sometimes like to listen. So people are not confined to actually watching. You don't have to be confined, so you got to watch, but you can actually listen. You can actually listen to the discussion. So without further ado, I want to say thank you very much and God bless you. Bye bye.